Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight, brought to you by Crimson Cloak Publishing, the earth-friendly publisher with books for both adults and children, in a wide variety of genres, available in paperback and hardcover, as ebooks, and with some audiobooks as well. In the Spotlight is a wide-ranging weekly interview show with authors, entrepreneurs, professionals, and other experts. Your host is Cynthia McGregor. Opinions and views expressed by the guests or hosts on this show do not necessarily reflect the opinions and views of the creator, Crimson Cloak Radio, the network, the hosts, or sponsors. And now, here's Cynthia.
Thank you, Carly McCracken, and welcome everybody to another edition of In the Spotlight. My first guest this week is Janet Bernstein. Janet is a visibility coach, speaker, and best-selling author who helps women overcome fears, embrace their authenticity, and form deep, long-lasting relationships with other women. Janet left a 17-year career in corporate insurance to pursue her dream of teaching women around the world to step into their purpose and unleash their full potential. She's the founder of the Every Heart Project, a heart-centered, membership-based women's organization that provides monthly events, masterminds, mentoring, workshops, and purpose-filled retreats. Janet's sixth book, The New Rules of the Sisterhood, was featured on ABC's Good Morning Texas, and she's here to discuss her new book, The New Rules of the Sisterhood, Reinventing and Restoring the Power of Friendship, all the things we keep doing wrong as women and how to change it. We need our sisters, that is friends, and we have to stop pushing them away. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you, Cynthia. I'm excited to be here.
Good. A 17-year career in corporate insurance. That sounds absolutely murderously dull.
It was so boring.
And what is a visibility coach?
So a visibility coach is essentially a business coach who helps people sort of step into the spotlight. So things like doing Facebook Live videos, putting yourself out there on social media, and really doing all those things that we need to do so that people can find us. That's really visibility. And really a lot of women specifically struggle with that part for whatever reason. It might be fear of success or fear of failure or fear of judgment. I really kind of help them overcome those blocks and start to shine.
Good. Now, what made you write The New Rules of the Sisterhood?
So I started a women's group about 5 years ago called the Every Heart Project, and I really loved the idea of getting women together and sort of taking off the mask and helping them connect, really those heart-centered connections. But I will say that over the years, I've kind of seen where women hold back and they don't really connect all the way, or they're kind of afraid to let other women in. And there's a lot of little things that we do as women to protect ourselves. And we put up these little walls. And when I wrote this book, it was really to sort of challenge that, to encourage us to tear down those walls and sort of talk about some of the things that maybe we're doing wrong and how to fix them and really improve the relationships.
Who is the book written for, Janet?
It's really written for any woman who wants to strengthen her community. And I think that at any age, we need a tribe. We need some sort of tribe. I have one member in particular who says this group is a cross between a support group and a sorority. And I think that we go through different times in our lives where we have a different tribe of people. When our kids are young, we might have that PTA group or other moms. And when our kids get older and start playing sports, we have those other moms that are by the sidelines with us. And then, we had the college sorority idea. And so I think that it's really trying to strengthen those sisterhoods, wherever you are in your phase of life. And it's really women of all ages.
Janet, this isn't the kind of book that you can do a heck of a lot of research on. So what was the hardest part about writing this book?
You're so right. You can't research relationships. The best you can do is do case studies, and that's the closest you can come to research. But really, when it comes to writing this book and putting all this information together, I was really drawing upon my own tribe, my own women's group, and some of the challenges that we faced. I was very honest with those women and said, some of the challenges we've had in our own group, the ups and downs, I'm going to use them as tools. I was very respectful and didn't use any names or call anybody out, but these are all learning experiences because that's what we learn from. We learn from our mistakes. We learn from the things that work and the things that don't work. And so while I couldn't really do a lot of research, I was really just looking back on, what's worked and what hasn't worked in my own sisterhood.
What do you hope this book will accomplish or change?
I really want this book to change the conversations. Instead of, the women can't be friends with other women or women are competition. I'm so tired of hearing that. I really want us to get back to knowing that women are our friends. We need our sisters. We need those people who are going to support us and push us and encourage us. And they're not our competition, that we're supposed to do life alongside each other. And so that's what I really hope, is that it just opens up the dialogue, and maybe some of the strained friendships that didn't bloom in the past, maybe they can be healed, as women start having very open, heart-led conversations with each other.
I never heard women can't be friends with other women, or what was the other one you said? I never heard those.
So women are competition. I would say I started in the book by really giving some examples of how in the corporate world, there's a lot of competition. We're sort of told there's only so many seats at the table. We're told there's this glass ceiling for women. Men aren't told those same things. And so what happens is it creates an unnecessary competition. And so we start looking at other women and saying things like, well, she got there because of this, or she got lucky, or we make judgments. That's one of my biggest concerns, as a woman, is the judgments that we pass on other women. And sometimes we do it without even knowing it. And that's really what this book is about, is just opening it up and saying, what, we don't need to be judging people, especially our fellow sisters. And you're very fortunate if you haven't had to deal with a lot of the sayings about women can't be friends or competition, because I think that when I was in the corporate world, that we heard nothing but that over and over again.
Well, Janet, I've never been in the corporate world. For 11 years, I had my own business, and I was, there was no glass ceiling. I was at the top.
Yeah.
And since then, I've been a freelance person, a freelance writer and editor. And so I've really never been, and I wouldn't want to be in the corporate world.
Yeah. Well, now that I've been on the other side of that world, I can't imagine going back to it. But I know that if I did have to go back to the corporate world, I would definitely bring some of these radical ideas with me and really try to change the conversations. And I think that it's very, very natural to sort of feel some sort of competition or jealousy towards our competitors. And what I'm trying to do is just say that our fellow women are not our competitors, and we don't have to look at each other that way.
What's your favorite chapter in the book, and why?
Well, there's a really funny chapter called Upgrade Your Bra. And I think as women, we can all relate to the need to upgrade a bra. So that's probably, when I say my favorite chapter, I think that one's a lot of fun because I got to have a lot of fun with that chapter. But really, my favorite chapter is the one I think is the most, need to be shared chapter. And that is More Empathy, Less Judgment. And it's really a chapter about breaking down the wall that we build that causes to judge other women, whether it's from politics or religion or even parenting. We have a tendency to make these snap judgments, and a lot of times it prevents us from getting to know someone. And there's a great saying that says, you can't hate someone if you know their story. And that's really what we encourage is, plug into your tribe, share your story, because once people get to know you, it's a lot easier to start relating to each other. And our goal is to find the commonalities and not the differences. And that's really the kind of the core of that chapter, more empathy, less judgment.
So why do we really need this book as women?
I think that we need it because we've lost our way. And I feel like, there are some people that it sounds like you're one of them that has figured it out and knows that women aren't competition. And you've been very blessed to have that. But there's a lot of women that haven't figured that out. And I think that over the years, especially the younger generations, I think that we lost our way. We've tried to do it all ourselves. We've tried to be these strong, independent women, which is great, but we forgot to take our sisters along with us. And I think that we need this book to remind ourselves that our tribe matters and that we're not supposed to do it alone. If you look back hundreds of years, women were always in these circles where they supported each other. They helped each other, raise their babies, and they encouraged each other. And I think that somehow we've gotten away from that, and we've been in this almost, dog eat dog kind of world where we think that we have to do it all ourselves. And I just don't think we do anymore. And I think it would be refreshing to see more sisterhoods really build up and help each other.
Janet, I won't ask you your age, but what generation are you part of?
Hey, I am very proud of my age. I'm 39. I will turning 40 this year. And I will say, age is a huge factor in these conversations. A lot of my friends and a lot of the women in my tribe are older than me, and we've also attracted some who are younger. And depending on how you were raised, what type of industry you might have worked in, if you were a stay-at-home mom or a homeschool mom, they all have these different, beautiful backgrounds. And I think that age really does play a factor. But the more that we get to know each other and we break down those walls and share our stories, the more we actually have in common. And that's really my mission with the Every Heart Project. Like, I have women ages 16 all the way up to 75. And they can sit at the same table and find some sort of commonality between them. And that's really a beautiful thing.
Well, yeah, I'm 75, and my friend Natalie is the same age my daughter would be if she were still alive. And she's not a substitute daughter or anything like that. She's a friend where, there's no hidden agenda or anything. But age is just irrelevant. She doesn't have kids, so she's not focused on, did my child poop today or anything like that, So we have commonality of interest, and it's not like where she's focused on stuff that's not part of my world. And age is irrelevant. And I have other friends who are the age my daughter would be if she were alive. And I have had friends who were my mother's age. Now, as I get older, those friends are not around anymore. But I've had a wide variety of ages of friends. So I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the closest, friendships that have formed in our group have been women who are 10, 20, or 30 years apart. And it's, sometimes they turn into a mentoring relationship. Sometimes they become a best friend relationship. And it's really quite beautiful to see things unfold. And I think that it's, once we kind of let go of perception or expectation, that's when those friendships can really thrive.
This is your 6th book. Tell us about your other 5.
So, three of those other five are compilation books that I participated in as a fellow author. So, two of them are called Behind Her Brand, and they are various powerhouse women across the country sharing their stories of how they built their businesses. While overcoming various trials and tribulations. Those were some of my favorite projects to work on. We also did a compilation book in the Every Heart Project that's called Every Heart Has a Story. And it's where we had 10 women share their stories of different stories of hope, of overcoming and whatnot. One of my favorite stories in that book is actually of my mother-in-law, who is 75. And she's a 5-time cancer survivor, and she opened up sort of for the first time about various experiences and said she really wanted to be a published author, and so we made that happen for her, which was really exciting. My very first book was called Pizza on the Floor, and that's actually what I sort of became known for a little while when it came out in 2016, and it's really kind of it's a memoir of growing up with a mom who had borderline personality disorder and sort of the challenges that I faced as a kid, as a teenager, really, growing up with that and dealing with all the things that happened because of it. So that's out there as well. And then a year ago, I released the Savvy Girl Media's Guide to Branding, which is essentially branding for entrepreneurs. So creating that business brand, a lot of the online questions that clients have come to me over the years, how do I create a website, social media presence? I put all that into kind of a step-by-step book, which is a great place for a brand new entrepreneur to sort of pick up the foundation of building an online business.
You said the Savvy Girl. Do you relate to the word girl as opposed to woman?
So when I was in the insurance world, a couple of people nicknamed me the Savvy One. And it was because everybody in the insurance agency would bring me their iPhones and laptops and devices and help me fix things or get them on the enterprise system or whatever they needed done. And so everybody started calling me the Savvy One. And so whenever I branched out in 2015 to start my business, my kids actually came up with the Savvy Girl. And so Savvy Girl Media is my other business in addition to the Every Heart Project. And so I do relate very much to the word girl because I feel like it's sort of like the girl next door. So it's kind of like your best friend, someone that would tell you how to start your business and give you like really good advice, but in kind of a non-threatening way. And so, yeah, we use Savvy Girl. It's sort of a fun brand. It's got a cartoon character that looks like me, and then my daughter, who's 21, is also part of that brand. So she's got her own cartoon character as part of Savvy Girl. So it's kind of a beautiful blend of both personalities.
Because, I was in the first wave of the feminist revolution back in the 60s and 70s, and we reviled the word girl because, the guys didn't call themselves boys, they were men or guys. And we didn't like to be called girls because we felt it was a put down.
Sure. I can definitely relate to that. Being in the insurance world, I remember in some of my younger days, younger in the career, being in the insurance office, and some of the senior, management would refer to as the girls. And I remember that being definitely a source of contention that nobody wanted. But I think that embracing the word girl, it's really more of a nickname. So I don't necessarily, I guess, attach a negative connotation to it anymore. I think the Savvy Woman sounds kind of weird. So I think the Savvy Girl definitely has a better sound to it.
Well, I'll use gal sometimes. It's not
sure.
It's not the best solution in the world, but I think it's better than girl. I mean, to me, girl sounds like, have your girl fax that over to me, you know?
Sure. Yeah, I think that we all have different backgrounds that we attach different meanings to different words. So I definitely see that being probably a hot button for some. I guess I don't see it as threatening because it's kind of a nickname. So I don't mind being the sappy girl.
Good. Would you read us a passage from your book, your latest book?
Oh, I'd love to. All right. And this is from the first chapter, and that chapter is called Add a Leaf to the Table. So I know I talked earlier about how we're told there's not enough seats at the table. So my solution is just add a leaf to the table. So let's face it, we know we need our girlfriends. We get together on a Thursday night after finally booking a sitter and spending an hour straightening our curly hair and wearing that new plum lipstick we purchased ages ago and lost in a sea of receipts and hair ties in our bottomless purses. We actually put on real clothes after having a brief internal debate about whether or not we can just wear our nice yoga pants out and still leave the house. We end up in skinny jeans and one of those fun open shoulder tops, and we show up ready to enjoy the night. We have an amazing time filled with laughter, hugs, and sometimes tears. But we are always holding back a little when it comes to forming those tight relationships, a part of us not trusting the motives of other women. We've all been burned before. Subconsciously, we've built walls around our hearts to protect us from the mean girls. We hide behind past hurts and broken promises, always ready to spew the heartbreaking stories when someone asks us why we won't join a certain group or tag along to a movie with a small group of women. We proudly wear our pain like hard-earned Girl Scout badges, citing it as the reason we are the way we are and that the idea of changing that behavior scares us most to death. So we perpetuate the cycle. Our past hurts never prevent us from forming those heart connections, but they do prevent us from forming them easily. I used to be this way too. I'm not going to lie. I used to say those things like women are catty or I don't trust many women. I only had a few close friends. And then one day I woke up around the age of 30 and I realized I had one good friend and a handful of prospects on a maybe list. If I had a rough day, I didn't have someone who would drop everything and bring me my favorite chocolate peanut butter ice cream and caramel syrup and help me eat it while I cried the ugly cry and watched Pretty Woman for the 500th time.
Good. Before I ask you to share either a funny story or a heartwarming story or one of each, let me make sure my listeners know where to buy your books. They're at www.savvygirlmedia.com, right?
That's correct.
They're on Amazon in paperback and Kindle, right?
Correct.
And they're also on www.everyheartproject.com, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Again, that's Amazon, paperback and Kindle. www.savvygirlmedia.com and www.everyheartproject.com. And again, my guest is Janet Bernstein. And again, the book in question is The New Rules of the Sisterhood. Have I got it all down?
You got it, Cynthia.
Thank you. Now, share with us either a funny story or a heartwarming story or one of each.
So, let's see. So I had someone reach out to me after she read this book. And she said she saw me on TV and was very intrigued by the title of the book and what I had to say about what it meant. And so she ordered it. And she sent me a Facebook message, and I didn't know her before this, after reading the book. And she says, she goes, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea, why I've always felt the way I felt when it came to relating to women." She said, "I would go to events and I would come home and I would be frustrated or annoyed or just felt unfulfilled." And she said, "I wouldn't go back. And I wasn't really forming the relationships. And I just couldn't figure out," she says, "what's wrong with me?" She goes, "All my friends are posting all these pictures at events." And she says, I can't figure out why it's not working for me." And then she said, "But then when I read your book," she said, "I realize now that I had put up those walls and that I was not allowing myself to even open up." She said, I was going to the events, but I wasn't telling anybody about myself. I wasn't really relating or engaging with anybody." And she said, "I was just going home and doing it all over again." And she said, "And I realized," when I read that passage, which the one I just read about waking up and not really having any true friends, she said it hit me like a ton of bricks, that I've lost my friend group. And she explained how her kids had, graduated high school, and she sort of, lost that parent group she always had, and then she was no longer working in the same field. And so she really said this hit her really hard, and she ended up reaching out to some other women, and she formed her own little book club. And she's since been in touch with me. This was about 3 months ago, and she said that it's completely transformed how she sees women. She feels like she really understands now why women do and say what they do. And I really just love that story, because it means that the book is working, and as far as it will go, it's going to keep working as long as women are open and they're willing to open their hearts. So
Good. Janet, we've got 3 minutes left. In the 3 minutes remaining, what would you like to share with our listeners?
If nothing else, I really want to challenge women to really form a tribe. Whatever that looks like. It might be a tribe at your church. It might be a tribe at your synagogue. It might be, a place where you gather and read books, but find some place where you have people that you can lean on, and preferably women, because the guys are great and we want to have male friends, and that's good too, but there's nothing like having a sisterhood. And just this week, one of our members actually had an unexpected surgery, and she's a young mom and has a less than 1-year-old baby. And it was really heartwarming to see our group kind of come together and provide meals for her over the next couple of weeks for her family. And that's the power of a tribe. And so wherever you are in your life, whether you're 25 or 75, find that tribe. Find a place where you can get out of the house and be yourself with other women.
Well, part of the problem, I think, today, Janet, is that your tribe may be scattered. I mean, now, for instance, my friend Deb lives in California. I'm in Florida. My friend Lori lives in Massachusetts. They can't bring me a casserole if I'm in trouble.
Yeah. And, and I would say a local tribe, is really important. If you can find it. And if you can't, you make do with what you have. And I would say, things like Skype and Facebook, they do make it a little easier to connect now. But I would also encourage, people that are across the country, find a central location, go spend a week together on a beach. You're in Florida, we should all be flying to you, Cynthia. And, enjoy each other while you have each other, because life is short. And I think that, we can get way too complacent with just not seeing people sometimes. And I think we just have to make it a priority.
Well, thank you very much, Janet Bernstein. Our time together is up. I have to do a quick commercial and then bring on my next guest. Good luck with your book, and mega sales to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Folks, I want to remind you that Our sponsor is Crimson Cloak Publishing for the best in fiction, nonfiction, adult books, children's books, and just everything except, I don't think they have cookbooks yet, but they would if they had one submitted to them. And they don't have erotic romance. That's a no-no there. But everything else. And featuring this week Mama's Map by Cindy Goodall, which is in her Princess Jellybean series. Princess Jellybean is a cat, and she spells it Jellibean. And it's the second in a series, Mama's Map, so buy it and read it to your kids. Now I'm going to bring on my next guest, Larry Johns.
Good morning.
Good afternoon. Where are you speaking to me from?
From Las Vegas, in my home, in my computer area.
Las Vegas, okay. I guess it's still morning for you.
Yes, it is. We're 3 hours waiting for afternoon.
It's 2:30 in the afternoon here, 2 hours away from the cocktail hour.
Well, I'm afraid I don't start at 1:30, so it's quite a ways for me. But hey. So how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Very well, very well.
Let me tell my listeners a little about you, Larry. Practicing trial attorney in Las Vegas there we go, for over 50 years, involved in hundreds of civil and criminal trials. Larry is the primary author of The Bernstein Disaster, a true story about the catastrophic underground nuclear test that went on December 18, 1970, releasing nearly 7 million curies of radiation in the atmosphere, exposing 86 workers to its radioactive cloud. 2 of the 86 workers died of leukemia within 4 years, and their widows sued the government. The lawsuit was in court for 25 years, during which Larry and his brother Alan, the co-author of the book, exposed the government's effort to cover up government negligence and information about the extent of the radiation exposure the men received. Although they lost in court, the federal judge sided with the government. The landmark case was primarily responsible for exposing the government's efforts to conceal from the public the levels of radiation produced by atomic testing. As a result of the lawsuit, the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act was passed by Congress in 1990, which has granted benefits for radiation-related cancers in the amount of nearly $2.5 billion, including benefits to Nevada site workers in the amount of $333 billion to nearly 2,500 workers or their families. Published by the University of Nevada Press in 2017, The Bernstein Disaster was republished in June of 2019 when Larry secured the rights from the UN Press and published a second edition, an audio version of which will be available soon. In addition, Larry is the author of a forthcoming courtroom thriller, a fictional murder mystery based upon his 50-year career as a trial attorney. Wow. Larry, what compelled you and your brother to write The Bainbury Disaster, which is about your experiences in taking on the federal government on behalf of victims of America's worst nuclear disaster?
Well, the Bainbury event in 1970 was the most catastrophic release of radiation at the Nevada test site since testing, this was atmospheric testing, was suspended in 1958. The Bainbury story is about the vent, the catastrophe, and the effects upon the two workers who went to court, their widows, that is. And as Nevada Congresswoman Dina Titus has stated, it was a story that needed to be told, and I was the one to tell it. And her comment is on the back cover of the book. So basically, it was a story that needed to be told, and I labored long and hard as to whether or not I should tell the story, and didn't start the book until 2008, long after the trial had ended, and decided that it was a story that needed to be told, and who better than the attorney that was involved from the beginning, now 75 years of age, and time to get it told. So that's how it came about.
And how did you translate your experiences in the courtroom and in trial prep into a compelling book that any American interested in the rights of victims, even in the face of a government committed to win at any cost?
Well, it was a difficult task. There have been many stories written about true court cases, but none about the Bainbury event, and few really about atomic testing from the perspective of the victims. I tried various approaches to telling the story, but determined that it unfolded best in the 3-month-long trial, the transcript of which is on file at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas Library Special Collections. So when I finally got around to writing it, I essentially used the transcript of the trial as the roadmap, putting in the events leading up to it, but essentially telling the story through the trial transcript and the fabulous array of witnesses that we called to court here in Las Vegas to present our case in court. I had, in addition to that, I had all of the news clippings about this case and many other cases that we had collected over the many, many years that radiation cases were in the courts. So with those two things primarily, and all the knowledge we learned about testing, it's a complete, really, history of atomic testing in Nevada, and the litigation that arose out of it. Not just Nevada test site workers, but uranium miners who went into the mines and pulled out the uranium that was used and processed for the nuclear weapons, and the downwinders who were downwind of the atmospheric tests in the 1950s, who suffered grievously from having the radiation dumped on their small communities. So the purpose was to try to bring all the lawsuits together and to show the significance of the Bainbury event, which really set in motion all of the other lawsuits. We were the pioneers. We were the first to actually take the government to court over the human tragedy of radiation effects, and the other cases followed ours. No one won. The government won every single one of them, either on legal grounds or arguable factual grounds, and spent plenty of money defending the image of the Atomic Energy Commission.
And what branch of the government was this that you were fighting? Was it the Atomic Energy Commission?
Yes, it was the Atomic Energy Commission, the civil arm that took over the responsibility for testing shortly after World War II and after the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But also, and to a greater extent, the Department of Justice, which was the legal arm that defended the government and always does. So it was both. And we learned painfully that there is a suppression of facts and evidence, and the courtroom is not necessarily the place where the truth ultimately comes out. It's the place where the parties make their best effort to present the facts. In this case, we did not have a jury, and that was really a tragedy in my view, because we always believed that if we had had a jury sit and listen to the evidence, we would have had a swift verdict, and it would have been a favorable verdict to our clients.
Well, why did you not have a jury?
Because in a federal tort claims action against the United States government, no jury is permitted. You can't sue the government and present a case against the government before a jury of 12 or 8 in civil cases persons. They're not subject to the same standards as private citizens. And when they passed the Tort Claims Act, they allowed suits, but they were suits tried only before federal judges and without juries and with a multitude of defenses not available to private citizens. So we had no choice. We had to decide. Would we pursue the case despite the odds? And we're glad that we did.
Well, that doesn't sound very fair, Larry.
Well, it isn't fair. It's not a level playing field, as everyone says. The government passed the act, gave people the right to win, but it's a very heavy burden to impose upon a private citizen trying to sue the government. If you sue a private corporation, on the other hand, you do have a jury. And that's why so many lawsuits against private corporations for negligent conduct and exposure of persons to chemicals, the most recent of which, of course, is against the company that puts out Roundup, which is advertising on television every day of the week to join the group.
Yeah, I see it on Facebook. Yeah. Larry, does anybody ever win against the government?
Oh, it's extremely rare. It's extremely rare. There are so many defenses. And let's face it, the wealth and the prestige of the federal government is at stake. And the cases are tried before federal judges, who are, by the way, appointed by the executive branch and serve at the pleasure of the executive branch and can only be removed by the process of impeachment in the House and then conviction in the Senate, which is very rare. So these judges have life tenure. They're not subject to review except by other federal courts. So it's a very heavy burden. And we weighed, it was a difficult decision to decide whether to pursue the case in the first place. But ultimately, we had to. We had two dead test site workers whose widows were denied benefits. And it was a decision we had to make and made. And I never have regretted it. It was well worth it.
Good. Larry, what sets the Bainbury disaster apart from other books that address government cover-ups and the arrogance of those who put their own career well-being ahead of the rights of innocent victims?
Well, I think we were among the very first. The Federal Tort Claims Act was passed in 1946. That gave the right of private citizens to bring suits against the government. and the first efforts were unsuccessful. But what we were able to do was to expose the cover-up. The government published a Bainbury summary report which contained information and statements that were false. And we established that they were false.
Fake news. Fake news.
Big news, fake news, whatever. I mean, and the American people, in our view, as a result of what we did, could see on full display what the government will do, and including the Department of Justice, its legal arm, to protect it from scrutiny, public scrutiny. And so that was the greatest and most satisfying accomplishment, to be able to establish that they concealed information from the public. And that's kind of what set in motion the other lawsuits by the downwinders and the uranium miners. The same conduct played over and over again to protect the image of a government agency. In that case, the Atomic Energy Commission, but I'm sure applicable to many other bureaucracies and government agencies today. There is a sense on the part of the government that they can do no wrong. It comes from the old English common law doctrine, the king can do no wrong, and they will do anything to protect their image rather than be forthright with the American people. And that's ultimately what happened, because the American people, through their representatives, passed legislation, the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, to compensate the victims of the radiation and the atomic testing program at the Nevada test site. So that was the great and satisfying reward from our standpoint of the whole process.
Larry, many authors try to get a publishing contract for their books and just go down fighting, but go down. And unlike so many authors, you were able to secure a publishing contract. How did you go about landing a publisher, something that must seem like a dream to so many other authors?
Well, I started out and went through the painful experience that everyone goes through. I prepared a 100,000 word manuscript. I had it edited by a very able and well-known editor, New York editor. And I tried through agents, publishing houses, and various other means to get it published. But it's a unique kind of work. It's really a lot of history, a lot of Nevada history, about a subject that most people aren't even aware of. Atomic testing is something that young people today, they don't even realize we actually were testing devices, atomic bombs and nuclear devices out here at the Nevada test site. So I went through all the processes, got all of the rejection letters, or no responses, probably more to the point, and was at the point of just basically giving up when the University of Nevada Press in Reno, they had a new editor, and I contacted him. And because it was important in Nevada history, and he was a very bright young man, with him, they were interested in publishing it. But it is truly a special type of publication, and it went through the academic press, which has many other aspects to it. And he published it, and I was grateful for that, because I did want it to, I wanted it published.
Well, let me ask you this. Having secured this publishing deal, what soured you on your relationship with the University of Nevada, Reno Press? What did you learn from your experience with them?
Well, promotion is everything, not just in publishing, but in every aspect of American life. And unfortunately, they were more interested in publishing a number of books each, twice yearly, and were not capable really of promoting. Expected me to promote, and I did everything possible. Did all the signings, went to seminars, went to a library convention in Denver, did everything that there was to do, but the fact of the matter is just the promotional aspects were just lacking. And so it all fell back on my shoulders, and given the, as you can imagine, the royalties that are little or nothing, it simply was not feasible to keep spending good money chasing after the prospect of little return. And it was at that point that I realized that I thought it was a story that was well worth telling, and if properly promoted, would be worth reading. And in order to do that, do the promotion right, I had to secure the rights from the University of Nevada Press and relaunch a second edition with a new prologue. And then there's an incentive to continue to work on it. I believe it was the great Dr. Samuel Johnson who said, 200 years ago, 17-something, that anybody that writes for any reason other than to make money is a blockhead. Well, he's one of my favorite authors of all time, and it's absolutely true. I wanted it to be promoted. I wanted it to be read, and there was simply no way to promote it successfully through an academic press. So that's why I made the decision, and with the help of Ned Barnett here locally, decided to publish it and relaunch it with a new prologue and with a new promotional program. And I'm very, very pleased. We just got it republished, second edition in June. And now there's an incentive and a new fervor to get something out, because I remain convinced that it's a story that is well written and needs to be read and has lessons for others who are facing government bureaucracies and government cover-ups. And that's really the message. Was the message, and it's even more poignant now than it was then.
What was involved in persuading the University of Nevada, Reno Press to release their rights to the book back to you?
I had to be aggressive, and I knew that. I had to point out that they have not been promoting it. They really didn't have the capacity to promote it properly. And when push came to shove, they recognized that, realized that it would simply sit on a shelf somewhere. Yes, it would sell, but I would say that my legal experience, my legal training, was part of the issue. That if you don't ask, you're not going to receive, and I wanted the book to be promoted.
Well, now, Larry, before I ask you any more questions, let me make sure that my listeners know where to buy the book if they want it. So,
it's on Amazon.
Yeah.
It's called The Bainbury Disaster.
Yeah.
The new title is America's Deadly Atomic Disaster. The former publication, The Bainbury Disaster, A Generation of Atomic Testing, is still up there, but it will be coming down soon because I now have a new publication and the rights, and purchased most of the books that were still available. So that's the name of it. There's a Kindle version, and I'm going to do an audio version too, because I think many people like audio versions these days, and I've thought about having someone else do it, but I think I can probably tell the story as well or better than anyone other than who's, a real professional. It's something I want to do.
You have a good voice.
Well, thank you. I've been told that I don't need to hire somebody, but that was my first concern. If I don't have the proper voice for the task, I should get someone else. But
you have the right voice.
It's adequate. It's adequate. Let's put it that way.
It's more than adequate.
And I can put the passion into the text that no one else could, having lived it.
Larry, do you not have a website besides Amazon? Is there not a website where people can?
Yeah, there's a website, and it's called Bainbury and Beyond. And the reason it's Bainbury and Beyond is because I'm going to publish another book soon, and so Bainbury was the launch, but it's the first. I'm working on a trilogy now about a legal murder mystery case based upon all of my years of experience and involvement in criminal work and in murder cases. And so I want to write again.
Good. Larry, we've got about 3 minutes left. Have you got an interesting anecdote to share with us?
I really think I do, and this goes back to 1956, and it's discussed in the book. The Atomic Energy Commission was conducting some plutonium dispersal experiments out at the Nevada test site. Plutonium, of course, is the most deadly of all of the radioactive substances, has a half-life of like 24,000 years, and if inhaled or ingested, it's deadly. 4 workers back in 1956 went back into the area where the test had been conducted, and one of them was hospitalized and died within 2 weeks after being exposed to the radiation in that experiment. And his widow sat at his bedside, and the government, through its representatives, assured her that there was a $50,000 insurance policy that would cover the loss of her beloved husband, and his organs at autopsy were sent off to Los Alamos Laboratory, the primary AEC medical laboratory at the time, for analysis. Well, somehow or other, the organs disappeared. And the other sad aspect of the case was that she was then informed that there was no insurance policy. So the poor widow packed up and went back to Oklahoma following her husband's death. I spoke with the mortician, who was still alive in 1990, who recalls when the body was shipped back for burial, recalls getting a call from the Atomic Energy Commission representatives telling him not to touch the body, that it was contaminated with radiation. So this cover-up goes back to the very beginnings, and that was one of the first and at the time most interesting examples of it. And if I didn't know that it were true, because I spoke to the guy who put the organs in plastic and shipped them to Los Alamos, and if I didn't talk to the mortician who buried the body back in Oklahoma, I would think it was all fantastic and fanciful, but it was true. And it was written about at the time. So that's just another example of the determination to conceal the truth. It almost, well, that's the story.
Yeah, it's criminal if you ask me. Larry Johns, thank you very much for being my guest this week on In the Spotlight. Larry is again the author of The Bainbury Disaster, and Bainbury and Beyond is the website, or you can buy the book on Amazon. Good luck. Mega sales to you, Larry. Everybody, remember to tune in next week when I'll have more good guests, and remember also to pass a smile along. This is Cynthia McGregor saying bye now.
You have been listening to In the Spotlight with your host, Cynthia McGregor, brought to you by Crimson Cloak Publishing. For a wide variety of books for both adults and children in print, ebook, and audio formats, join us every Tuesday at the same time as In the Spotlight brings you interesting guests who entertain and enlighten you. I'm Carly McCracken. On behalf of Crimson Cloak Publishing, thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll join us again next week.